Think about the conversations that you have in your life. I think conversations are indicators of what kind of relationships exist. What is our reality in terms of the relationships we're in? And I want to say a statement that I really want us to hold on to this morning. And it's this: the substance of your conversations mirrors the substance of your relationships. Think about that for a second. Just let it sit in. The substance of your conversations that you're having in your life mirrors the substance of the relationships that exist in your life. And most of us, we could determine what kind of relationship people have if we walked around a restaurant and listened in on the conversations. Not sure if you've ever done that. Don't admit it if you have. But if you listen to the people at a restaurant talk, I mean, you could tell, are they friends? Are they coworkers? Are they family members? Maybe romantics? You can tell us by what people are saying at the table or not saying at the table. You can tell us by looking at people's comfort levels with each other, or by looking at what topics of conversation people avoid at the table or what they don't talk about. Maybe there's tension there and you notice that. Or maybe you notice the vibrancy and the life and the energy that revolves around that conversation. And I think the irony is that sometimes we naively believe that relationships in our lives happen to us rather than us happening to them. Right? We're the tone setters in the relationships of our lives. We're the tone setters through the conversations and the dialogue and the words that we choose to engage with. And so what would happen if people secretly listened in on your conversations as you were going through life throughout your day? Have you ever sat at a restaurant where the table is so close to the other table next to you that you can hear each other's conversations? I hate that. Right? That's why I always request a booth, because you can get away from people, and have privacy. And so one day, Sherry and I go to Cheesecake Factory, and we sit down at this table, and we're bummed out because they sat us at a table that's literally 12 inches apart from the next table. And I'm like, we should just sit together and meet each other, And so we're sitting there, and when we sat down, we were on kind of like a date, and so we were like, oh, this stinks that people are that close. It's kind of awkward, But after a few minutes, the people paid their bill, and they left, and we thought, oh, great, we have some privacy. But then a few minutes later, of course, the hostess comes and sits another couple down at the table. And we try not to make eye contact, but we sort of casually do, try to be sly with it, and we look up and we see people we know. But they're not really friends, they're more acquaintances. We've never really had a conversation past hey, how you doing? How's the food? And so it wasn't like we could just say, hey, we should just eat together. But we were eating together, so it was awkward. But we're sitting there 12 inches apart, and you know what happens when that happens, if you've ever experienced this, is there's a new filter that goes on, right? You become super conscious of every word you're saying, right? It's like we even talk in code language a little bit. You can't use names because they might know someone, or if you say something that even sounds negative, even though you're not trying to be negative, and it gets back to the person, it's like this whole new thing is happening in this conversation, and it's awkward, right? And you're conscious of every word. And I think on a serious note, what if that was our life? What would our words be? What would people hear if they listened in to the conversations that we were having? Would they be impressed because of how we spend our words, how we use them and capitalize on the moments we have with them? Or would they be disappointed because we waste our words? Perhaps we even cause damage in the relationships and conversations of our life. Perhaps we cause our relationships to go backwards with our words. What would people think? And I think the truth about me is there are some days and some conversations and perhaps even some dinners that I'm at that I would be embarrassed if people heard what I had said. Perhaps sometimes I'm passive and disengaged in a conversation, or maybe I'm superficial or self-absorbed, or maybe I'm hypercritical or negative in a certain conversation. And there's certain days and certain conversations I am just glad no one else hears them. Sometimes there are things I bring before God and have to confess and apologize even to Him and to other people for. But as people would listen in, if they did or if they could, on the conversations that I'm having, they could assess really my relational health or unhealth. Because our words reveal where our heart is. Our words reveal the health of our relationships. And I think we forget this sometimes as we travel through life. We forget about this one thing, no matter how simple or complicated our relationships are, we forget about the power of our words. Words are not empty, they're not static, they're not unimportant, they're not insignificant. Words are dynamic. Words are vehicles that we can actually use to move our relationships forward, to add meaning and depth and texture to our lives. And I think sometimes we live unaware of the effect of our words, or we live callous to the damage that perhaps they cause, and we end up moving our relationships backwards. But we don't have to choose that path. We don't have to engage in conversations that way. In fact, we can actually use our conversations and our words to move us forward and to move other people forward.